Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video, and welcome to episode 188 of Ask Boss Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I basically answer your questions. So if you have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comments section below, and hopefully, as I say, you'll be featured next week. I do apologise for anyone that asked a question in the previous week that hasn't been answered today. I did get a ton of questions this week, which is what we want. This is how the series works, but unfortunately I can't get round to them all. I try to pick the sort of most relevant questions to what's going on in the community, so obviously quite a few of the questions are about the HasLab, but it doesn't mean that your question is a bad question. And if you want to persevere with it for next week, then please leave that same question down below. Before we get on to this week's questions, I just want to say a huge thank you to Neil Pullinger and Geek Strong, who have become my latest channel members. Thank you so much for the extra support, guys. Really do appreciate it. And with all that being said, let's get on to the first question of the week. Wookie Squatch says if they do the Phantom 1, they could pack the mural card back of Sabine and Chopper with it, like they did the two figures that came with the Jabba's Palace Adventure playset. It could be a Hasbro Pulse exclusive and complement the HasLab, kind of like the Hiss Fireteam pack complements the Cobra Hiss tank. If they were to do that, do you think they could potentially repack all 6 figures in the regular Vintage Collection line on different non-mural live-action picture card backs? No, basically, because they did say that these versions of the figures, the Season 3 / Season 4 versions of the figures, will not be available outside of the HasLab, or at least the ones that are coming with the HasLab anyway, so not Sabine and Chopper. That was the only chance that you were able to get those figures, so I hope everybody that's watching this that wanted those figures back them, because they are never coming out again. Of course they will use parts of those figures to bring out different versions of those figures, but those mural card backs and those figures that came within that HasLab are exclusive to it. Skibbles83 says, question for next week, with the Ghost heavy reliance on the mural card backs for tier incentives, do you think special care will be taken to ensure those card backs arrive undamaged, or perhaps an exchange if they do? Yeah, I think generally the ones that came with the Razor Crest, most people's came in decent condition, and as you say, with the exchange there, I do know people out there that exchanged their yak face that came with the barge, so some people weren't happy with the card, and they actually did eventually, it took a while, but eventually they got it exchanged for another one. Hopefully Hasbro, if you're listening to this, I doubt you are, but if you are, please pack the card backs into the Ghost really well. Maybe like double box them or something, tissue paper in between them, whatever it takes to protect those card backs, because of course we want them in mint condition. Scolio Reset says, greeting Tim's question for next week, another pipeline reveal, yet another Vader. What is the most likely option for this release, since there's nothing preventing Hasbro from going backward using VC178's upper body instead of retooling the VC241 masterpiece even further? Regarding the card back, do you think we'll get the original marketing image seen on both VC08 and VC93, or a brand new one like VC280? Maybe you have one in mind. And with the OG Vader and Tanty 4 Leia pipelined, is it a sign that we may get an announcement for a full, newly tooled old Ben? So there's a lot to unpack in this question. So in terms of the Vader, I mean, I think they'll stick to the majority of the new Vader, like they did with the Return of the Jedi version. Of course, they gave us like a new hand and bits and bobs, and repainted his chest plate and things like that. The A New Hope one is different, isn't it? Because is it the tabards on his shoulders? They're like underneath the armor or above the armor on that version. I can't remember which way round it is, but yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do with that. I'm sure they won't go back to the Rogue One version. Pretty sure they won't anyway with that plastic. Hopefully they'll figure out a way of doing it with some soft goods maybe, but be interesting to see. In terms of the card back image, you know, it's Vader from A New Hope. You would think that they would go back to that original Vader, but as you say, we've already had VC08 and VC93 using that image, so maybe they will design a new one. I can't tell you which one they're going to do. It's out of my hands completely. I think maybe if it's an all-new, definitive A New Hope Vader, then possibly they just have to do it on that card back. Although I probably would want to see something new, if I'm honest. And in terms of the new tooling for Old Ben, I think at the end of the day, the new heroes, Leia is just the start. And I think they actually said that in one of their live streams when they pipelined Leia. I think it was Chris that said, you know, this is the start, basically. This is the first one. So I think over the next however long, we can expect Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Ben Kenobi, and hopefully even Chewie as well. Maybe we'll get a new Chewie in the future as well. So fingers crossed, but the new heroes are definitely coming. The The community has spoken and they are listening. So, you know, Leia is the first one in that list. Darth Rogue says, hello, I have a question regarding the TVC Jabba's playset. They said it comes with a mini carded Salacious Crumb figure. Do you know if this will be similar to the SDCC Death Star Salacious Crumb? Thanks. So apparently it's an all new figure. This is what I heard. And they did say that it is going to be on some kind of mini card. So here's the original, basically. This one's graded. Whether it'll be on that image, I'm pretty sure it won't be on a Revenge card. And I'm hoping that they don't keep the number of VC66, because I think they should follow the rule of, you know, all new figure should be an all new number. That's my opinion anyway. I mean, some people might want this one to say that they've now got it in their collection, but at the end of the day, this is the Revenge card, and I don't think the one that comes with the Jabba's playset will be Revenge of the Jedi. It will be Return of the Jedi. Maybe they'll just do a Return of the Jedi version of that one. Who knows? But yeah, it's something, again, that I just do not know what they're going to do. We're all going to have to wait to see what they do with it. But yeah, certainly interesting to think about it anyway. This is No Cave says, question for next week. Very pleased with the success of the Ghost HasLab campaign. With the previous Vintage Collection HasLab campaign, Hasbro has gradually built up the number of figures that interact with those TVC HasLab vehicles. It has now been confirmed that Rebels versions of Sabine and Chopper are on the way. What other figures do you see as likely to be brought into TVC to interact with the Ghost, and what do you think of the likelihood of a new Vintage Collection release of the Phantom 1? Because the Rebels version doesn't measure up, and the shuttle dock on the back of the Ghost looks a bit oversized for the Phantom 2. So it has been confirmed that that Phantom 1 that came out in 2015 for the Rebels line does not fit into the Ghost HasLab. And I personally think, because the Ghost HasLab was such a huge success, Hasbro should come out right now and promise the fans that they're going to make an all-new Phantom 1, you know, using some of the profit from that basically. So then we can recreate the early series of Rebels where they've got the Phantom 1 and it'll fit in to the back of the Ghost. And I think that would be pretty awesome if they did that. In terms of other figures that are going to be coming out, I'm pretty sure that, you know, as I've said before, they will use those sculpts to retool versions of the Rebels characters, the main heroes basically. They're not going to be just done with the ones that come with the Ghost and, you know, versions of them from the Ahsoka series. I'm pretty sure that they'll go back and do like the animated style with realistic head sculpts basically of all of them. And we already know we're getting Thrawn from Rebels, so, you know, there's other characters that I would like. Agent Callas is always one that I've gone to, because I think that one especially could be quite easily achieved with the officer sculpt and maybe the armor, and then also you could get maybe a new General Veers out of that one as well. So plenty to look forward to. I'm pretty sure that, you know, now the Ghost is a big hit, that we will be getting other figures from Rebels. Lamar Avery says, hi Tim, what are the chances of getting a TVC HasLab once a year? There are so many vehicles that we need to have made. For instance, the Gondor Hallcraft, Ahsoka's T6, Bad Batch Marauder, Mandalorian starships, an updated upscaled U-Wing, Stormtrooper landing transport craft, Jawa sandcrawler, and so on. I totally agree with you, mate. There are lots of vehicles and even playsets that, you know, they need to do essentially. Will they do a HasLab once a year? I mean, I think there's lots of things to consider. People's wallets is one of them. I've noticed recently, you know, so many things have been coming out all at the same time. We've got the playset, the N1, then they took all the money for the Ghost. The Jabba's Goons 4-pack just came out. So lots of things are coming out at once, and I think they do need to be a little bit careful of that. However, with the lack of vehicles and playsets in the main line, I would like them to do a HasLab for the Vintage Collection every year, maybe two. Maybe you could do a figure pack and then a vehicle, or a playset and a vehicle. You know, they don't have to be massive, huge things for them to do. So I personally would like them to do that, but as I say, you know, they've got other things to juggle around. They might do a Black Series one next, you never know, and see how that goes. But, you know, Vintage Collection is 3 for 3 at the moment. 3 successes out of 3. So that suggests that they can't go wrong with the Vintage Collection. So bring it on. Reckless Deck says, hi Tim, going to try this question for next week again. Couple of weeks ago, you asked us your opinions on other potential sets Hasbro could make at the Boba Fett's Throne Room price point. There were lots of ideas in the chat. Some were very solid favourites people have been saying would make great HasLabs for a while now, but also some totally new ideas as well. Care to go over some of your favourites and discuss the pros and cons? So I just wrote a little list from the comment section about the ones that people have come up with, and I'm just going to read them off quickly, and then I'll sort of go back to the ones that sort of stick out for me. And so we've got the Yoda's Hut, Death Star meeting room, Star Destroyer bridge, detention level prisons, the Cantina, Rancor pit, Home 1, Hoth Rebel base, the Echo base basically. Then you've got the Echo base medical area with FX7 and 21B, which I particularly liked. That was a good one. Ewok village, a Tatooine hangar, Palpatine throne room. So what I did take from that is it was all original trilogy, pretty much, wasn't it? If I'm looking at that now, yeah, all original trilogy. And there was a few on there which I would love them to see to do at that scale. Specifically Yoda's hut, I think that would be a great one for them to do. The only problem with the Yoda's hut is the lack of characters that you could sort of use with it. And I think that's one of Hasbro's things with these play sets and HasLabs. I think they like to sort of have a lot of figures that can go with them. So if you look at the throne room, even the skiff here, how many characters they've got. They've re-released him, they've re-released him, they re-released him with Carbonite, they brought him out, and we've just recently got Velkin. So they've populated that vehicle with new releases and reissues. And that's the thing with the Yoda's playset. You've got basically Luke, R2 and Yoda and maybe Vader or something in the Cave of Evil. But that's about it, isn't it? So for me, at that price point, I could see them doing maybe the Cantina. Now, I would like it if they could do like a Cantina with just the bar and maybe one alcove, and maybe woo her as the packing figure, and then maybe you could buy add-ons like add-on alcoves, maybe the stage where the band are playing and things like that, and then you build it up like a modular set, but you don't have to buy it all at once, because I think if you were to buy it all at once, then it would end up being a HasLab with lots and lots of different figures. And also that would then push them to making those aliens that we need in the line. Yep, apart from that, the Echo base medical with the Bacta tank was a really good idea, because you could get FX7 and 21B out that way on card, tick off 2 of the original 96. I thought that was a solid idea. So Stephen Novak says, in regards to the mistakes with VC numbering, do you think if they reveal the numbers when they do their figure reveals, this would let us catch mistakes and tell them? I know Patrick has said they don't reveal the numbering because it could change, but obviously someone is not doing their job. I think it's one of those things, it's like a human error basically, and I think occasionally they do tell you what the VC numbers are on the bottom of their sort of slides when they're doing these panels and things like that. Not all the time, but very occasionally. But I think the problem with them announcing the numbers is that it probably opens it up for mistakes even further, because, you know, they might announce it a year before the figure comes out, and then all that time is enough time for them to mess up the numbering basically. So I don't know if somebody's just sitting there at Hasbro with a spreadsheet and maybe they're the only person with it and they don't share it with the other teams or something, but you would think it would be an easy thing to not get wrong, but obviously occasionally they mess up. Jeff Russell says, hey Tim, do you have a running count of how many newly tooled figures we have received so far in 2023? Curious if we're still getting a slow increase year over year. This is quite a hard thing to track, because obviously 100% newly tooled figures is different to a partial tool, and a partial tooled figure could be just new hands, which, you know, essentially is pretty much an all newly tooled figure. So I think we're about 12 for the year, and I think if we get 13, then that's one more than last year. I think there are better people in the community that track this stuff than me. So the SWTVC guys, for example, at the end of the year, they always look back and they have these graphs and everything on, and John Miko as well in the Facebook group does a really good job at this, about how many, you know, partial tools, newly tools, repacks, reissues, repaints that we've had in the year. But I think it's probably one to sort of look back on once the year's finished. C3PO Concept says, what's up sir, great video as always. Do you have a theory as to why Hasbro hasn't produced a Cobb Vanth for the Vintage Collection? He appeared 3 years ago and he's wearing Boba Fett's armour. Seems odd that he wasn't the first Mando Season 2 figure. I'm sure they'll make one, but there must be more to the story. Yeah, I think it could be one of those things where maybe they planned to do it and then it got pushed out for other figures, and that really sort of gets on my nerves a little bit, because, you know, let's just say that Hunter was the figure that, you know, they decided to make over that figure. We've got Hunter from the Bad Batch because everyone wanted the Bad Batch figures, and we've only got Hunter from the Bad Batch. We've got none of the other crew. And when are we going to be getting those crew? Your guess is as good as mine, and that is what annoys me. They need to sort of look at these groups of figures, and Cobb Vanth is obviously one that's needed. We've got Cad Bane now, and it's just, yeah, he's a big miss from The Mandalorian, isn't he? So hopefully they'll rectify that next year. I can't see us having to wait too much longer for him. but we'll have to wait and see. Rhett Roberts says, thank you, Tim. My question for next week is, with the new Deluxe Jango Fett pipeline, do you believe they are just making a Deluxe first to get more sales for that price, and then perhaps they will re-release him later on in his own card back? I believe they've done this before with the Tusken Warrior and Ahsoka. What do you think the Deluxe Jango will come with? Perhaps both of his jetpacks, flamethrower effects, poncho and his headset. Cheers in advance. So yeah, it's an interesting one, this one, isn't it? That it's going to be a Deluxe, but I think, you know, there's possibly a reason for that. And maybe the reason is that they, you know, it removes the headache of what to do with the card back, because we already have Jango Fett in the line and it's an awesome card back, isn't it? So I don't think they just want to repack him on there. So let's think perhaps that, you know, putting the new Jango Fett into a Deluxe box and putting a bunch of accessories in there that maybe we do or do not need removes that headache, but also, as you say, they can charge a higher price point for the figure. No idea whether they'll repack it, but I think, you know, to start with, it removes the headache of what to do with this, because essentially we've already got the figure, as I say. What do I think it'll come with? I think you're right, it'll probably come with some extra flamethrower effects and things like that. Maybe a swappable helmet and head, which would be pretty cool. S. Nichols says, question for next week, excited about the new Rex. When it comes to clones, do you prefer a battle damaged stroke, dirty deco or clean? I like the former. Also, the Pipeline Stormtrooper has me thinking, has there recently been a perfect Stormtrooper with both rocker ankles and the new hips? I can't think of one. Cheers. Scott. No, there hasn't. We haven't had that yet. I'm not too sure if they will do that. It'd be brilliant if they did, but I've got a feeling that they might just sort of get that Walmart exclusive one out there again, just as like a refresh in the line. That's personally what I think they will do. In terms of whether I like a battle damaged or clean version of the clone, I like both basically, but I think I would like the clean version on its card back, and if they were ever to do like battle packs or 4 packs or something like that, then maybe a bit of sort of battle damage or, you know, weathering on them then would be pretty cool. I think then I'd get the best of both worlds. Jacob Ears says, just watched your Court Denizens 4-pack review and had a question about Velkin's head sculpt. In your opinion, do you think the head would be passable as a Nizuk Beck head sculpt? After watching a review, I think I may pick up another Velkin and cut off the mask part of his helmet to make a Nizuk Beck figure. I think so, yeah. So anyone that's watching that doesn't know who, is it Nizuk Beck? Is that how you say it? He was the guy in Jabba's palace that Luke stole used the Force to grab the blaster out of his holster. And I've got to say, I had a look online, and I've got to say that head sculpt looks pretty good actually. So you might be onto something there, buddy. I think you might be able to make yourself one of those out of this figure. Tony Z77 says, superb as ever, Tim, mate. Question for next week. With the current HasLab campaign now in the rear view mirror, and with 3 successful TVC ones, all being vehicles, do you think the next one may also be TVC, but a playset like a Death Star or a Cantina? Or will Hasbro attempt to go back to the Black Series and do a vehicle this time like the AT-ST? So this kind of goes back to that question that I had earlier about the HasLab, but you know, where do we go from now? So I think the previous question was about whether I thought one would be every year, but you know, regardless, what would the next Vintage Collection HasLab be? And once again, I think they need to look at, you know, fan votes, fan polls, look at the community, what they're looking for, because I think the Ghost was made A, off the back of it, and also because it was coming out in the Ahsoka series, so it's kind of like a double whammy for them essentially. But at the end of the day, the Ghost, on everybody's polls that I know of that conducted a poll, the Ghost was the most wanted vehicle, and they've made it. I think second to that was the Death Star playset. So if we were ever to do a poll again, let's see where the Death Star arrives on everybody's list. You've got the Imperial Shuttle, which I imagine would be up there. But in terms of the next one, as I say, you know, it could well be Black Series, couldn't it? You know, and then we're all going to be a bit disappointed because most people that are watching this video are TVC collectors, and we want it to be TVC. But we're 3 for 3, Hasbro. You know, we back these things, man. So give us another one and give us what the fans want. Jared Cantor says, hey Bossk, it goes without saying that I love the channel. I live for these Sunday videos, which helps me get through the long weekends with a 1-year-old. Cheers, buddy. I appreciate it, my friend. He says, question for next week. Assuming no family obligations and that it would be easy to find a job, would you ever consider relocating to another country to make collecting easier? I'm sure collecting in the UK isn't that much harder than in the US, but I assume it would be a bit easier stateside to attend conventions and get exclusives, etc. I think from a collecting point of view in the UK, we're actually in a good place at the moment, especially with things from Hasbro Pulse. You know, we've already got the Jabba's 4-pack. These guys here. I think we got the Tusken Raider 4-pack before anybody else as well. But as much as I do love England and where I live, you know, I am quite a sort of homesick person. When I go away, I do get a bit homesick. But, you know, I would love to live in America, absolutely, attend all the conventions. But it's a big place, isn't it? Even if you lived on, I don't know, the east side, there might be a convention on the west side, and it's absolutely miles, isn't it? It's just such a huge country. But, you know, I do love America. Every time I've been there, I've absolutely loved my stay there, and it is somewhere that, you know, my wife especially would love to live. So yeah, no family obligations, or if I found it easy to get a job, I would seriously consider it. Yeah, absolutely. All right then, guys, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have a question for next week's episode, please leave it in the comments section below. If you haven't seen my review of the Jabba's Court Denizens, that is on the channel. We have these two awesome figures here. Squid Head, amazing. And of course, Velkan, which completes the prisoner's skiff. Bossk wasn't there, of course, but he's just there for effect. But thanks so much for watching, and thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members. Your support means a great deal to me, so thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.